Good morning. Oh, thank you. It is such a pleasure to be with you this morning. Great to have an opportunity to spend a little bit of time and talk to you about where we're headed with education in the great Commonwealth of Kentucky. Before I get started too much, I want to start really by commending and just saying how much I appreciate some work that's recently been produced by the Chamber in partnership with the Pritchard Committee. They produced a document called Citizens Guide to Kentucky Education, Reform, Progress, and Continuing Challenges. That's a pretty big deal. And I say that because, one of the things that we know, and everybody probably in this room at some point has made this comment, that those who do not pay attention to history are doomed to repeat it. Well, in Kentucky, I would take a little bit different slant and say there are parts of history that we should repeat. A couple of those are the fact that there was a lot of people with a lot of courage that started to make movements in education in Kentucky a long time ago. And reminding us of that, and reminding us of the courage it took back in the 90s with Kara and through today to make some of the changes that we've made is pretty incredible. And if you've not had the opportunity to attend any type of education conference outside of Kentucky, it's something that people talk about a lot. When you go to a meeting nationally, you hear a lot of people talking about Kentucky. And not in the, at least we're not kind of context, but actually holding us up as beacons of how you really can make change in education. Now, we're not at the top yet. We've got a lot of improvement to make, but what I will tell you is that we have led the nation in improving student achievement over the last, especially 5 to 6 years. So this document is huge, and I just want to start by just really thanking the two organizations for putting that together. Because as a new Kentuckian, and I can't tell you how much I love saying that. I spent the last 6 years in Maryland and D.C., and I never said I was from Maryland and D.C. And spent the first of my life in Georgia, and I'll mention that I started there, but it's just great to be here for so many reasons. But being a new Kentuckian, I've learned a lot about Kentucky history. And so one of the things that is very powerful is that every education reform that has happened has been in large part driven by the business community. That's huge. I mean, I testified in front of the House Education Committee, the U.S. House in Washington several weeks ago. And I'll talk a little bit more about how I ended up in D.C., which I'm still figuring out myself in some ways. I got a question from one of the U.S. representatives that said, it just seems like Kentucky's ahead of the game on this business and education alignment thing. And I was happy to speak to that. It was great. But that's the kind of thing is people notice that. And people notice the courage that our business community has in pushing the education community. And what I believe has been good receptivity on the part of the education community. We've got to be better. We've got to do some more things to better align, and I think we're headed that way. But I couldn't really get started with this conference without first saying how much I appreciate the Chamber and Pritchard, but also our business community and how you've helped drive us into such great places. So we have a lot of work to do. I've been at the department. It'll be 9 months tomorrow. In some ways, I feel like I woke up yesterday and was in Kentucky. In other days, I feel like I've been in Kentucky for years. But I celebrate 9 months tomorrow. And it's been just a fantastic 9 months. I don't have to say this to anybody, but I do all the time. It is the greatest job I've ever had outside of being a classroom teacher. I absolutely love it here. I love working with everybody here. But we've got some big challenges ahead of us. And I wanted to share with you just very briefly a couple of things at KDE that are happening that hopefully will give you a sense of where we're headed. First of all, we have embraced the idea of our children, our commonwealth. And the purpose for that is that we're trying to change the rhetoric in our schools to be not about the kids that just sit in front of a teacher in a specific classroom or a specific building or in a district, but that we start to actually think about the fact that we all have shared responsibility for ensuring that our students have a better life after school. And the idea that if we actually embrace the idea of our children, which means I'm not in competition with districts or schools beside me, but I'm actually realizing that I've got to do a better job and have better offerings. And sometimes my offerings can't be the same as somebody else's, so I should have a better relationship with districts across the line so that we can actually have students engage in career and technical education options, in advanced placement and IB options, that we start to kind of break those walls down a little bit. I believe that if we really embrace the concept of our children, I believe our commonwealth will flourish. Because what will happen is we won't be worried about just getting my kids to graduation. We'll worry about graduating all kids with opportunities beyond school. The other part is that our guiding principles are equity, achievement, and integrity, which what that means to me in short, and I know all of you are going, yeah, Commissioner, we know what those three words mean. I know y'all are smart people and you can Wikipedia it if nothing else, but you might not find the Pruitt definition in Wikipedia. And so let me just quickly share with you. Equity means to me that every student has every opportunity that they want when they graduate school, which means we have to tear down a lot of walls. We have to help people start seeing that academia and going to four university is not better than going to career or into community and technical college. It's just different. Thank you. It's that we don't worry about putting some type of stigma on kids because they choose to go into different directions. Because the point is that they actually all leave being able to live fulfilled lives and being able to contribute to the Commonwealth and beyond. So there's a lot of work that we have to do with that and giving kids equity in that regard. Achievement is where usually people hear the Commissioner of Education start talking about test scores. You're not going to hear me talk about that as much. Tests are important. They are important in so much as that they are able to at least give us one insight into the equity of education across schools and districts, but they aren't and can't be the end-all be-all. They actually need to be one indicator. For me, achievement has to go beyond that, and we have to think about achievement in terms of students being able to become career ready and gain those licensures, be able to graduate with those career pathways, opening up more opportunities for students in visual and performing arts, opening more opportunities in modern languages, so that it's actually about the achievement means that the kids actually are getting to do the things and excel at the things that they are interested in, but also will lead them to something important after high school. And finally, integrity, and that's something I'll end with more in a moment, is the fact that as the Kentucky Department of Education, we've got to build a system where parents, teachers, and kids that we're being honest with them, whether it be about test scores, whether it be about accountability and how we measure our school success, that it's got to be something a little bit easier to understand and something that's honest. Right now, our current accountability system is not simple, and it's a little bit convoluted, and it kind of leads people to not have as much trust in it. So we're working to try to fix that. So we got several things going on at the department. One is a much greater focus on career and technical education. In fact, I think what you're going to see over the next several months is eventually we're going to come out with our new vision for career and technical education. Part of that is the fact that we want, as I said before, to tear down those walls and say, you know what, it's acceptable for any kid to participate in any program. One of the smartest kids I ever taught, his name was Dustin. I was a chemistry teacher. I taught him in first year chemistry and in AP, and legitimately one of the brightest kids I've ever seen. And right now he's working on his second specialty at Vanderbilt University, and neonatal something or other. I can't even pronounce what it is he's taking. And let me tell you why he's doing that. He's doing that because he took a course two courses in high school called Health Occupations, where he got an opportunity to see what it was like to provide health care. And it was a lift to get him into those courses because his parents thought that it would actually put a smudge on his transcript for him to be in a career and technical education course. And we met many times to convince his parents that, yes, he can still get into any college. Yes, it'll be okay. It won't prevent him from being anywhere. But it took a lift to really get his parents there. And I really believe that that's a big reason why he's doing what he's doing in the medical field right now. And that's what happens so much with a lot of our kids. Now, I will tell you, there's been a lot of work done in career and technical education over the last 5 years. In fact, if you've not been into a school lately and gone to a CTE classroom, I would encourage you to do so. As they say, it ain't your mama's vocational class. The world has changed drastically. The idea of really helping kids become high-skilled workers has been a focus. But it's actually time for us to revamp that and to have a much greater focus. We are actually currently in the first phase of a new grant from J.P. Morgan Chase called New Skills for Youth. Kentucky was one of 24 states that received this. We are working now toward getting the critical pieces into place to be able to apply for a round 2, which will drastically change the face of CTE in our state. We are working more closely with the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board than ever before, so much so that the approval of our career and technical pathways, we are actually going to them for them to approve it as opposed to it happening at the department. We're working with them, of course, and I'll tell you that's going to create some consternation in the field because there are a lot of people who just want those pathways. Well, those pathways aren't going to do us any good if the kids that graduate from those pathways can't get good jobs. They have to be something that is meaningful, that are truthful with what kids are able to do. And I don't know about you guys. I mean, I've got a 20-year-old. He's going to be hopefully graduating from college in a couple of years. But I don't know about y'all, but my goal his whole life has been to make sure he didn't live in my basement. And I think that's a goal of a lot of parents. And so we want to make sure that we're doing a better job with that. So in working with the Kentucky Center for Education and Workforce Statistics and the KWIB, 5 priority industry sectors have been identified: business and technical services, construction, healthcare, manufacturing, and transportation. So it's good that we led off with that this morning. So we're going to continue to work with those innovation boards, and we're going to continue to forge a much stronger relationship, and we're going to push our districts. If they're offering pathways that have a kid graduate, but actually in the region that they're living in, there's no job for them, there needs to be a question about why are you offering that pathway? We've got to be more responsive. We've got to make sure that we're driving more toward allowing students to have that opportunity. I didn't do it, I promise. But that's also an area we need you guys to continue to hold us accountable. My commitment to you and to everybody else is we are going to push to do education differently in Kentucky. It's time for that next big step in education reform in Kentucky. But we need our business partners to help drive that. I've been working closely with Secretary Heiner, of course, with the Workforce Innovation Board, but another area that I'd like to just briefly mention to you is in working with Secretary Ramsey. I'm a big supporter of apprenticeship programs. I believe that I believe that's an area of our culture that we left behind at some point in our history. I mean, apprenticeships have been around a long time, long before the U.S. was ever put into place. And so I want to encourage all of you, if you have opportunities for apprenticeships, reach out to your local districts. We will help you. We will find ways to help get kids into our schools. The thing that Dr. Box mentioned earlier about our graduation or about our dual credit, and now with apprenticeships, that I would just like to very briefly say to you is, they give kids who did not have a vision of their future a vision for their future. Some kids who never thought they could ever do anything beyond high school, for the first time, see they could be successful in a college class or in an industry. So I would really like to encourage you to make that a priority. If you want more discussion about it, feel free to contact my office or Secretary Ramsey's office, and let's see how we can make that happen. We want to do what we can to actually really put kids into that place. With time running out, I just want to mention one last thing to you, and that's about a huge initiative that I think is probably, it may be the biggest thing that happens in my tenure here in Kentucky, and that is that back in December, the President signed the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the newest iteration of the original Elementary and Secondary Education Act that was passed back in '65 by President Johnson as part of the civil rights laws that were being placed in at that point. This is our next iteration for school accountability. In short, what that means is how we judge the effectiveness of our schools. And I'm wanting to see some pretty big changes. The Chamber is sitting on our steering committee. We have several, actually, other folks that are sitting on our steering committee from the business communities. And I really want to see us change from just worrying about whether kids can pass math and English tests to actually really pushing us toward the idea that graduation is not the goal. Graduation is merely a stepping stone to the rest of a child's life. So we really need you to be a part of that. And I know how busy you guys are, but I know it's also been a little bit tough we've reached out to several, needing people to be a part of those committees. And I know it's hard to give up time, but if you're interested in helping us, we really need people to help give us feedback, to sit on a couple of committees and help us think through how we can increase opportunity for kids and move things away from just simply what they scored on the test to actually what are they showing accomplishment toward. In other words, to me, if a child graduates with several certifications in welding, we should celebrate that just as much as the fact that they could pass a reading test. Not that the reading test is not important, but you don't get it. Not many people are going to get a job simply being able to read Harry Potter. You know, and I don't mean that flippantly, but that's a reality. I also think that we've got to be able to help make sure that and we heard this in our town halls that I conducted, we've got to be able to find a way to ensure that kids have a full, well-rounded education. And we don't forget how important what I would consider more cultural literacy around the arts and around languages and around social studies that have sort of lost out because of No Child Left Behind. And then just the last couple of minutes I'll share with you that I have been in Washington twice over the last month. I wrote a little letter to the U.S. Department of Education and Secretary King a couple months ago that got a little bit more play in the media than I had expected, because they were asking me to do some things that I felt was against the integrity of the Commonwealth and against the integrity of my office and me personally. The short story is that they were wanting us to do some things with our science assessment that to me were basically was going to result in us lying to children about their proficiency level. And so I said, I'm not going to do it. The secretary called me and said, you know, Commissioner, let's talk about this. I said, I'm not talking about it because I'm not going to change. And if you need to find me, find me. But so you may have heard we've been placed on conditional status for our federal grants. And I don't anticipate that they're going to take any money away because the condition is that I actually follow the plan that I submitted to them. Well, duh. I mean, to me, it was a little bit more political probably than anything. And as a result of the letter, I was asked by the House committee a couple of weeks ago and by the Senate committee yesterday to come and talk about the implementation of ESSA. The short story is that the timeline's too short. They want us to do a single summative score, which doesn't allow us to really dig into what schools' behavior is, and that the actual regulations are so heavy that they actually, I'm worried that they're going to fall in on themselves the way No Child Left Behind did. So happy to talk about that more. If you'd like to see the testimony or read it, it's online. But again, we are going to need your help as we go forward. I don't just want to request your partnership. We've got to have it, because educators, and I am one, so understand when I say this, I'm not being critical of my educators, but we've not been in the workforce that you're in. So for us to make those decisions by ourselves in isolation is just a bad idea. And I think we've seen that over the years. So we need you, but more importantly, our kids need you. That's why it's important that we do embrace the idea of our children, our Commonwealth. So thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your meeting. And I appreciate all the work and commitment that you've given to our students over the years. Thank you.
Commissioner, as the new kid on the block, thanks for sticking up for us. And now Bridget Blum-Ramsey will make her presentation, and then we'll have some Q&A following her presentation.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Is everybody ready for a stretch break? I think you'll hear from the Pritchard Committee many of the same themes that you were hearing from Commissioner Holliday. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Pruitt. I don't think he heard me say that. From Commissioner Pruitt, and many of the things that you will also hear from the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. So I think that's a good sign of the alignment that we've always had in the state of Kentucky that has served us so well. And I think what you also heard a bit in Commissioner Pruitt's reflections here this morning is a bit of celebration. And that's what I wanted to start with. The fact that we are in a place in Kentucky where we should be celebrating our education outcomes. Kentucky has made tremendous progress in educational achievement since the 1990s. In one generation's time, we've moved from the bottom of the national rankings in education to the middle and above. On the most recent release of NAEP scores, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, Kentucky students ranked 8th in the nation in 4th grade reading. And we ranked roughly average for all states in 8th grade reading and 4th grade math. Our high school graduation rate is in the top 10 in the nation, and the gap in high school graduation between traditionally underserved students and their peers is one of the lowest in the nation. We have more students prepared for college-level work and more students choosing to pursue higher education after high school. This didn't happen by accident. Kentucky has improved so significantly in one generation because of a collective commitment from policymakers, the public, and business leaders who have championed education reform since the 1990s. And we've shown, in fact, that improvement is possible, and it is still possible. However, while we have increased achievement for all students, we have an achievement gap in Kentucky that persists for traditionally underserved students, those in low-income families, African American students, students with learning disabilities, and English language learners. These disparities present not only a moral imperative to do better, but an economic imperative. Dr. Eric Hanushek of Stanford University estimates that if Kentucky were to bring all students up to a basic level of proficiency on NAEP, it would translate into an extra $335 billion in Kentucky GDP. If we're going to move Kentucky into the top tier of all states for education outcomes, we must move with urgency to continue to increase achievement across the board and close the achievement gaps. Within the next month, the Pritchard Committee will be releasing a report entitled Excellence with Equity, It's Everybody's Business, which provides recommendations to take action to begin to close these gaps. In addition to this report, and to continue to increase achievement for all students, there are 5 key areas that we find to be particularly important to continue to increase student outcomes across the education pipeline. They are early childhood education, effective teaching, mathematics, career and technical education, and performance-based funding in post-secondary. In the area of early childhood education, based on decades of research and the results of Kentucky's own kindergarten readiness screener, for which we now have 4 consecutive years of data, we know that achievement gaps begin early. We see them before kindergarten. Low-income students are not as well prepared for kindergarten as their peers in more well-to-do families. The same holds true for African American youngsters, and we see gender differences before kindergarten as well. Increasing quality and access to early childhood education is going to require greater collaboration between public preschool and childcare, and a focus on the quality of the workforce in early childhood. Thanks to support from business leaders, I'm sure some in this room, the Kentucky General Assembly in 2016 set aside $7.5 million in each year of the biennium for incentive grants to encourage such collaboration between public preschool and childcare. This will help increase the quality of early childhood programs and build the capacity to help ensure children have access to full-day, high-quality care that is best for working families and to support their early brain development. Such partnerships are also good for business. The Committee for Economic Development estimates that the child care sector in Kentucky contributes $810 million to the economy. This is a small business industry that contributes significantly. In the area of effective teaching, research time and again makes the case that the single biggest factor in student learning over time is the quality of instruction a student has in the classroom. We probably all know this from our own experience in school. In other words, teachers make the biggest difference. Research is also clear that the second most important factor is the school leader. So with that, I'd like to offer a thank you to all of you and to the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce for supporting the Leadership Institute for School Principals. This type of intensive professional development is sure to pay dividends for years to come and have significant spillover effects. Kentucky's teachers have been doing the hard work of implementing new standards that define not only what a student should know, but also what a student should be able to do with what they know. That's ultimately what you all are asking for as business leaders, is that students can do something with what they know. Our teachers have also welcomed opportunities for more effective feedback to improve their teaching by contributing to the development of the educator professional growth and effectiveness system. Yet, teacher effectiveness is still a challenge. As business and community leaders, we need to ensure we have the structures in place and that we have committed the resources to support teachers in increasing the quality of their practice and, in turn, effectively increasing the outcomes of our students. In the area of mathematics, while Kentucky is now in the top 10 in the nation in 4th grade reading and high school graduation rates, we lag the nation in mathematics performance. In 8th grade math, Kentucky lands in the bottom 10. We know as well that the U.S. falls below the average of other industrialized nations in mathematics literacy. We have much to do to better our students to ensure they have the knowledge and skills they need for post-secondary education and the types of high-demand careers we would, no doubt, like to attract to and retain in our state. Kentucky's new mathematics standards are the right start for us to ensure both mastery and application of mathematics skills beginning in the earliest years, but it's up to us to ensure the state increases its focus and energy on supporting teachers and students as well as parents to make sure the standards translate into the results that they promise. On one very promising way to increase achievement and close achievement gaps is through a new vision for high-quality, rigorous career and technical education. And you heard the commissioner mention this. And I'm hopeful that's not the first time you've heard us talk about career and technical education. Career and technical education encourages not just some, but all students to connect their academic work in mathematics and science and other areas with real-life experiences that prepare them for high-demand careers. A recent study from the Fordham Institute on CTE programs in Arkansas found that participation in CTE led to greater likelihood of graduating from high school, enrolling in a 2-year degree program, being employed, and having higher wages. This effect was most pronounced for students from low-income families. Kentucky simply cannot make strides towards this vision without the support of the business community, and here I echo Commissioner Pruitt's comments. To elevate demand for CTE and partner with schools, we need the business community to ask for and help us put in place rigorous and relevant programs. Lastly, as we increase student outcomes and increase college and career readiness, we need to ensure access, affordability, and quality in our post-secondary system so students attain the higher levels of education we need to grow Kentucky's economy and quality of life. In recent years, we've seen declining support and increased financial burdens on students. At the same time, there's an increasing demand for an educated workforce. We, along with the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, have begun to look into the promise of performance-based funding models that are being developed in many other states. The Council on Post-Secondary Education and our universities have also been investigating and studying this topic. In this last session of the General Assembly, the Kentucky legislators established a post-secondary education working group charged with developing a performance-based funding model with a focus on performance, university mission, enrollment, and attainment, and ask that the members of the working group submit a report by December 1st of this year. So we look forward to contributing to this conversation as we continue to strive to ensure all students can achieve their post-secondary goals and contribute to a high level in our economy. In conclusion, I have to say once again that we are in a moment of celebration in Kentucky. Kentucky has made tremendous progress over the last 26 years, and this is something to be very proud of. Effectively, we have provided proof of concept that improvement is possible. With a sense of urgency and renewed commitment to a belief in our potential as a state, improvement is still possible. We look forward to working with the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, business and community leaders all across Kentucky to realize our vision of moving Kentucky and Kentucky's students into the top tier of all states in our nation. Thank you all. You want me to stay here?
Bridget, yeah, if you would, if someone has a question or a comment for Bridget's presentation, please come to the microphones, identify yourself. Bridget, let me just begin. Someone makes their way to the mic. How would you suggest that the business community get more involved in career and technical education? You encourage the business community to be aware of that, but just give us a couple of concrete steps that you would suggest that they look to.
Great. I think the commissioner asked that business leaders be involved in the conversation, and I think that's an important first step. We have workforce investment boards across the state, but there should also be other opportunities for the business community to really talk about what they need, but also what they can contribute, how they can help students better understand what the demands are in the workforce, help expose students to the opportunities that are available to them in the workforce, particularly in rural communities in our state where students are not exposed to the variety of career opportunities available to them. This is an important first step that I think the business community can take. But in addition to that, if there are ideas that the business community has about the needs and how they can contribute, I think together we need to figure out how we build stronger apprenticeship programs, stronger pathway programs that are not about learning about a career in a book, but are about actually practicing the skills in a career because we have the right programs, the right infrastructure in our high schools, in our school districts across the state, where students can actually apply their knowledge, get their hands dirty, understand what it's really like to participate in a certain career, and identify whether or not that's a career they want to continue in.